In the heart of a forgotten town, shrouded by the dense, whispering woods, stood the infamous cursed mansion. Its spires pierced the sky, and its windows, like hollow eyes, gazed upon the world with an eerie emptiness. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was perilously thin. It was said that on the night of a blood moon, the mansion would awaken, its cursed inhabitants roaming the halls in search of unsuspecting souls to torment. Despite the warnings, a group of friends, driven by curiosity and the thrill of adventure, decided to spend the night in the mansion. They laughed off the tales as mere superstitions, eager to prove their bravery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, they approached the mansion, their laughter fading into uneasy silence. The air grew colder as they stepped inside, the grand foyer echoing with the sound of their footsteps. Candles flickered to life on their own, illuminating the way deeper into the mansion. The friends split up, each drawn by an unseen force to explore the mansion's dark corners. In the West Wing, Sarah found herself in a room where the air was thick with sorrow. The walls were adorned with portraits of a family, their eyes following her every move. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, and the portraits began to whisper, their voices a chorus of despair. Sarah tried to flee, but the door wouldn't budge. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, until they became screams of agony. Just as the voices reached a crescendo, the door swung open, and Sarah ran, the echoes of the tormented souls chasing her down the hall. Meanwhile, in the East Wing, Michael stumbled upon a library where the books seemed to breathe. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and secrets. As he reached for a tome, the room plunged into darkness. The sound of pages turning filled the air, and whispers danced around him, telling tales of the mansion's cursed past. A cold hand brushed against his cheek, and he felt a presence behind him. Spinning around, he saw nothing but the darkness. The candles reignited themselves, and Michael bolted from the room, the whispers turning into mocking laughter. As the night deepened, the mansion came alive with horrors. Shadows moved on their own, forming shapes of the mansion's former inhabitants. The friends, now scattered and terrified, experienced their own nightmares. They heard the sound of children playing in empty rooms, only to find them vanish when they turned the corner. They saw figures darting through the halls, always just out of sight. The climax of terror came when they reunited in the grand foyer, only to find the staircase transformed into a writhing mass of shadows, reaching out to pull them into the abyss. The friends fought against the darkness, their screams mingling with the ghostly wails that filled the mansion. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows, the shadows receded, and the mansion fell silent once more. The friends, shaken and pale, stumbled out into the morning light, vowing never to speak of the horrors they had witnessed. But the mansion was not done with them. Each night, as they tried to sleep, they heard the whispers of the cursed souls, calling them back. They saw shadows moving in the corners of their rooms, and felt cold hands brushing against their skin. The cursed mansion had marked them, and they knew that the terrifying terrors of that haunting night would haunt them forever. Noah had always been a skeptic when it came to the supernatural. He scoffed at ghost stories and dismissed tales of hauntings as mere fabrications of overactive imaginations, but as the protagonist of true stalker horror stories, a popular online series where he shared and investigated chilling encounters, he had begun to question his disbelief. Each story he delved into seemed to peel back the layers of reality, revealing a world much darker and more complex than he had ever imagined. It all started when Noah received a mysterious message from a viewer named Evelyn. She claimed to have experienced something unexplainable, something that defied logic and reason. Intrigued, Noah agreed to meet her at an old, abandoned house on the outskirts of town, the very place where her terrifying ordeal had begun. As Noah approached the dilapidated structure, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The house stood like a sentinel, its windows like hollow eyes, watching his every move. Evelyn was waiting for him, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She recounted her story in a trembling voice, describing how she had been stalked by an unseen presence ever since she had explored the house. Noah listened intently, his skepticism warring with a growing sense of unease. He agreed to investigate the house, armed with nothing but his camera and a flashlight. As he stepped inside, the air grew colder and the musty smell of decay filled his nostrils. The house seemed to groan and creak around him, as if alive. He began to document his findings, moving from room to room, his camera capturing the eerie stillness. It was in the basement that he found something truly unsettling, a collection of old photographs scattered across the floor, each one depicting Evelyn in various locations, unaware she was being watched. The timestamps on the photos were recent, yet the images themselves were printed on aged, yellowed paper. Noah's heart raced as he realized that Evelyn's story might be more than just a figment of her imagination. He hurried back upstairs, but Evelyn was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as he called out her name, his voice echoing through the empty halls. That's when he heard a whisper, so faint it was almost inaudible. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around him like a cold embrace. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, until Noah could make out words that chilled him to the bone. "You're next," Noah, the voice hissed. He spun around, trying to locate the source of the voice, but there was nothing there, just shadows that seemed to dance and twist in the corners of his vision. Noah's skepticism was now a distant memory, replaced by a primal fear that clawed at his insides. He ran from the house, not stopping until he reached his car. As he drove away, he could have sworn he saw a figure in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of the house, watching him leave. It was only when he looked again that he realized the figure was gone. In the days that followed, Noah found himself haunted by the events of that night. He tried to dismiss it as a trick of the mind, a product of stress and fatigue. But then the photographs started appearing, photos of him, in his own home, asleep in his bed, eating at his favorite diner, always with that same aged, yellowed look. Noah knew then that he was not dealing with a human stalker. Whatever was following him, watching him, was something far beyond his understanding. He began to research, delving into ancient texts and obscure lore, searching for answers. He learned of a phenomenon known as the whispering shadows, spirits bound to a place of great sorrow or violence, feeding on the fear of the living. They were said to attach themselves to individuals, stalking them until the terror consumed them completely. And Noah realized that the house was a nexus of such energy, a beacon for these malevolent entities. And now one had latched on to him, drawn by his own investigations into the unknown. Determined to break free from the shadow's grasp, Noah returned to the house, armed with knowledge and a newfound resolve. He confronted the darkness, speaking to the shadows, challenging the entity that had chosen him as its prey. The air grew thick with tension, the whispers rising to a cacophony of voices, all screaming his name. But Noah stood firm, reciting the words he had learned, a banishment that would sever the connection between him and the shadow. As the final word left his lips, the house fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the shadows receded, leaving Noah alone in the quiet. He knew then that he had succeeded, that he was free. But as he left the house for the last time, a single, aged photograph fluttered to the ground at his feet. It was a picture of him, standing in the doorway of the house, a look of terror on his face. Noah picked it up, a chill running down his spine. He realized that while he had escaped the clutches of the whispering shadows, the experience had left an indelible mark on him. He was no longer the skeptic he once was. He had seen the true face of horror, and it would forever be etched into his memory. Noah continued his work on true stalker horror stories, but with a newfound respect for the darkness that lurks just beyond the veil of the known. He had become a beacon for those who had experienced the unexplainable, a voice for those who had been silenced by fear. But every now and then, when the wind howls just right and the shadows stretch long into the night, Noah can still hear the faintest whisper calling his name, a reminder that some doors once opened can never be fully closed.